With barely 5 million people marooned in the open ocean and thousands of miles from major markets, New Zealand should have been wiped off the global agricultural map. Yet, this small island nation built a nearly $40 billion export powerhouse, conquering the planet's most demanding markets. Instead of racing to the bottom on price, New Zealand chose to master the premium value chain through cutting-edge technology and masterclass commercial strategy. How did an isolated nation turn the entire world into its playground? Join Agriculture Insight as we decode Oceania's #1 agricultural miracle right now. Our first stop brings us to the lush kiwi orchards, stretching across the North Island, the cradle of New Zealand's kiwi industry. Generating over $3 billion in annual export value and crowning this island nation as the world's leading exporter, this tiny fruit carries a backstory few actually know. Hardly anyone realizes that the kiwi represents one of global agriculture's most masterclass rebrandings. While hailed as New Zealand's ultimate national icon, this fruit didn't originate here at all. In fact, it traces back to China, where it once grew wild as the Chinese gooseberry. It wasn't until the first seeds arrived on New Zealand soil in 1904 that its history-altering journey truly began. Every year, between March and June, these orchards enter their most critical window of the entire season. Unlike fruits harvested mechanically with heavy tree shakers, New Zealand's premium kiwis are still predominantly hand-picked today. This isn't just about preserving fruit value. Kiwi fruit does not sweeten any further once severed from the vine. Harvesting even a few days too early or too late can compromise dry matter, sugar levels, shelf life, and consumer taste. Pickers must meticulously gauge weight, firmness, and maturity for every single fruit before gently placing it into picking bags to ensure export-grade perfection. Straight from the orchards, these kiwis still face an intense gauntlet of factory testing before shipping out. To prevent bruising, bin tippers gently release the fruit onto soft conveyor belts that brush away surface debris without using water, minimizing moisture to maximize shelf life. Once cleaned, the fruit moves instantly through an advanced computer vision system. In fractions of a second, high-speed cameras and multi-angle optical sensors simultaneously scan size, shape, color, and uniformity to weed out anything subpar. Only the fruit meeting every benchmark makes it to the packaging line. There, they are neatly nested into custom-molded trays, packed into padded cartons, and dispatched across the globe to more than 100 countries. Among thousands of mollusk species worldwide, there is one that the globe almost exclusively turns to New Zealand to source: the greenshell mussel. Distinct for its emerald green lip, this species is cultivated almost exclusively in the pristine waters of the Marlborough Sounds in northern New Zealand. With this near monopoly, New Zealand maintains an annual output of nearly 100,000 tons, standing as the planet's largest commercial supplier of greenshell mussels. Unlike the Netherlands, France, or the US, where mollusks are often harvested from the seabed or farmed on intertidal mudflats, New Zealand positions its greenshell mussels in deep, sheltered bays rich in plankton, allowing them to grow suspended on continuous longlines. Zero industrial feed, zero daily feeding, and virtually zero human intervention throughout the entire growth cycle. Millions of mussels cling densely to these lines, filtering natural plankton from crystal-clear ocean currents until reaching harvest size in about 18 to 24 months. Come harvest season, Specialized vessels cruise alongside the lines and lock the backbone ropes into hydraulic winch systems. Heavy, mussel-laden lines are hauled from the water and guided across stabilization rollers directly onto the deck. Dense clusters then pass through a declumping machine, where rotating rollers strip the mussels from the rope without fracturing their shells. Next, the mussels travel across sorting conveyors to be stripped of seaweed and barnacles, and to filter out undersized specimens before being loaded into bulk insulated bins. Once ashore, fresh catches head straight into processing plants for immediate washing, quality grading, and size sorting, kicking off a seamless, rapid manufacturing run. Tailored to specific market demands, they are packed live, blanched, half-shelled, or fully shucked into pure mussel meat, unlocking diverse product tiers from a single harvest. Once processed, the final products are vacuum-sealed, flash-frozen, and fed into the cold chain export pipeline, locking in the signature plumpness, delicate sweetness, and ocean-fresh taste of New Zealand greenshell mussels. Available for just a fleeting few weeks each year, New Zealand cherries spark a high-stakes global frenzy. Every season, over 5,000 tons of these premium cherries conquer the world's most demanding markets, cementing their status as the ultimate global benchmark. In New Zealand, crafting cherries of unmatched quality relies on far more than favorable climate. It demands an arsenal of high-tech ingenuity. On freezing nights, helicopters hover low over the orchards to churn the air, pushing warm thermal layers down to shield delicate blossoms from frost. After heavy rainfalls, where trapped moisture threatens to split the fruit, helicopters take to the skies again, skimming the canopy with intense downdrafts to blow the entire orchard dry. By mid-December, as millions of cherries turn a taut, glossy crimson, the harvest officially kicks off, triggering an intense race against the clock. Unlike the heavy industrial shakers common in the US for processing cherries, New Zealand strictly relies on hand-picking for its fresh exports. Harvesters select only peak ripeness cherries, deftly twisting the stem to snap the fruit free in one swift motion, rarely touching the skin to prevent microscopic bruising. Once picking buckets are full, they are gently transferred into large lugs to minimize impact before being rushed straight from the field collection points to the pack house. At the plant, cherries are gently floated into cold, aerated hydrocooling flumes. This flushes away field debris while instantly stripping core heat to lock in crisp firmness and preserve vibrant green stems. Next, the fruit passes through an advanced optical array of high-speed cameras and sensors, grading size, color, and firmness, while instantly flagging splits, soft spots, or internal defects. Even with cutting-edge automation, human inspectors run a final visual check to catch any flaw the machines might miss. Finally, the top-tier cherries are delicately packed into gift boxes or specialized export cartons, sealed in an unbroken cold chain and air-freighted across the globe. costing up to 50 times more than standard honey, and so rare, it requires its own scientific fingerprint to prove authenticity. Manuka honey stands as New Zealand's most formidable liquid gold. Generating over $500 million annually, this liquid powerhouse has turned a small island nation into the undisputed global authority on luxury honey. But what lies behind this prestigious sweetness? Surprisingly, there is no such thing as a Manuka bee. Any honeybee colony placed in a blossoming Manuka forest can craft this prized nectar. The real secret lies inside the flower's nectar, which produces methyl glyoxal, MgO, the signature compound behind its potent antibacterial power. The higher the MgO rating, the stronger, rarer, and pricier the honey, driving ultra-premium jars to nearly $1,000 each. Because the Manuka bloom lasts a fleeting 2 to 6 weeks a year, beekeepers must time hive deployments with pinpoint precision. Yet most native Manuka forests thrive in remote, rugged highlands unreachable by road. Once the bees return to their hives at dusk, the boxes are sealed and airlifted straight into the wilderness via helicopter. From there, the colonies operate as non-stop living factories, deploying tens of thousands of worker bees to forage every precious drop. It is an intense race against time. The window is razor thin, the blooms are scattered, and hives constantly compete for flowers at peak bloom. Once the honey frames are full and capped with a thin layer of wax, beekeepers use gentle smoke to calm the hive before lifting the heavy frames out. Post-harvest, the frames are rushed to the processing plant, where the wax caps are uncapped and the comb is pressed to release the thick, viscous Manuka flow. Every batch is filtered, lab-tested for MgO levels, and cross-referenced against chemical markers to certify pure origin and potency. Only after meeting every rigorous benchmark is the honey graded, jarred, sealed, and shipped worldwide. Introduced from Europe in the 19th century, purely for sport and recreation, red deer quickly adapted to New Zealand's rugged climate. Multiplying unchecked across vast mountain ranges, they soon became an ecological crisis. Yet instead of treating them as pests to eradicate, New Zealand engineered an audacious turnaround, transforming feral deer into a lucrative $500 million farming industry. Turning this wild threat into an economic engine was an arduous journey, beginning with daring captures in the backcountry. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, helicopters skimmed steep peaks and chased herds through treacherous gorges. These high-stakes airborne captures netted the foundation stock, paving the way for modern deer farming. Today, red deer roam expansive open pastures, free to graze on nutrient-rich native grasses, legumes, and forage. This near-wild, low-stress environment keeps herds exceptionally healthy and yields consistently premium velvet antler. After 8 to 10 months of growth, when the velvet reaches its optimal stage, the harvest begins under strict animal welfare and hygiene standards. Stags are guided into specialized handling pens for health checks. Under proper local anesthesia, the velvet is swiftly removed using surgical-grade saws to minimize stress and protect product integrity. Once removed, the antlers are immediately cleaned, briefly sanitized with hot water, and rapidly chilled or flash frozen to lock in bioactive compounds. Prized for centuries in traditional medicine, top-grade deer velvet can fetch up to $10,000 per kilogram. Highly valued in pharmaceuticals and health supplements, it remains one of New Zealand's most unique, high-yield export marvels. Our next stop brings us to Waikato, the heartland of New Zealand's dairy empire. These rolling green pastures generate 1.9 million tons of dairy exports annually, keeping the country at the pinnacle of the global industry for decades. A world away from intensive feedlot farming, herds here spend the vast majority of their lives free grazing on open pastures. Through precise rotational grazing, the cows constantly feed on nutrient-dense young grass, while naturally walking to milking stations guided by regular biological rhythms. To secure year-round nutrition, farmers harvest and silage surplus grass at its nutritional peak. This natural fermentation preserves vital micronutrients for months, providing a strategic food reserve when pasture growth slows. During harsher winter stretches, cows move into modern, climate-controlled barns. Diets are precisely calibrated with silage, hay, and grains. The entire facility is heavily automated. Robotic feed pushers keep forage within reach, while automated rotating massage brushes groom coats, boost blood circulation, and eliminate animal stress. During milking, the cows step onto massive automated rotary parlors. Under precise vacuum pressure, raw milk flows instantly through sealed lines, where it is filtered and flash chilled to 4 degrees Celsius within minutes, before heading directly to processing plants. With naturally elevated fat and protein levels, cutting-edge automation, and an uncompromised pasture-to-plate philosophy, New Zealand has built an untouchable powerhouse in the global dairy market. It is no exaggeration to say that even a single frost sweeping across a few hillsides in Turkey can send shockwaves through the global chocolate industry. Accounting for nearly 70% of the world's production, Turkey not only leads in cultivation scale, but also holds enough sway to dictate supply, influence prices, and shake the entire global confectionery industry. To learn about the tree that has sustained generations of local people, we head to Ordu, a region stretching along the Black Sea coast and considered the cradle of Turkish hazelnuts. In the past, to harvest an entire hazelnut orchard, farmers had to use multiple separate machines for each stage, from sweeping and raking the nuts into rows to vacuuming and cleaning them. However, since the introduction of self-propelled harvesters in the 2000s, the entire process has been nearly consolidated into a single pass, shortening processing time, drastically reducing manual labor, and cutting harvesting costs by at least 50%. As the machine moves into the orchard, 2 front-mounted disc brushes continuously spin close to the ground, pulling hazelnuts, dry leaves, and twigs from both sides into the center aisle. Shortly after, a high-powered suction system draws the entire mixture into the machine, where multi-tiered vibrating screens and powerful airflows successively remove soil, stones, leaves, and light debris. The standard nuts are conveyed straight up into the rear storage bin as soon as they exit the cleaning system. Once full, the bin unloads directly onto trucks for immediate transport to processing facilities. At the plant, the hazelnuts first pass through a screening system to remove any remaining soil, leaves, and twigs. They are then transferred to a temperature-controlled drying chamber to lower their moisture content, prevent mold, and protect the quality of the kernels inside. Once the standard dryness is reached, each batch is further sorted by size, shelled, and meticulously inspected piece by piece to eliminate shriveled, damaged, or discolored nuts. The high-grade kernels are ultimately processed into countless high-value products, with the most famous being Nutella, the chocolate hazelnut spread that has won over hundreds of millions of people worldwide. As Turkey's iconic goat breed for centuries, the Angora was even featured on the back of the 50 lira banknote between 1938 and 1952. Not only a source of national pride, they have also been likened to raw silk production machines. As evidence, in 1959 alone, this commodity contributed nearly 7% of Turkey's total export value, turning the goat's fleece into a national asset. On the central Anatolian plateaus, standing 800 to 1,500 meters high, where summers are scorching and winters are blanketed in snow, Angora goats are still raised to produce one of the world's most valuable natural fibers. Every morning, they are released in herds onto wide hillsides, slowly grazing on fresh grass, shrub leaves, herbs, and patches of vegetation. During the dry season, the goats can navigate slopes and rocky areas to make the most of scarce food sources, while in winter, they must use their hooves to scrape away thin layers of snow to find grass underneath. By evening, the herd is driven back to the barn for shelter against the cold and supplemented with hay, alfalfa, grains, and minerals, helping the mohair continue to grow long, lustrous, and durable. When the goats are about 12 months old and the mohair reaches 12 to 15 centimeters, the first harvesting season officially begins. The goats are placed on the ground or tilted slightly backward to keep them steady, while the shearer runs large shears or electric clippers from the belly up to the torso, shoulders, and then the back, aiming to separate the entire fleece into a single, seamless sheet rather than cutting it into separate patches. A single miscut or a second pass over the same area can break the individual fibers, significantly reducing the value of the entire mohair sheet. At the factory, individual fibers must be kept intact, the vital key to spinning, through the stages of dusting, length measurement, and fineness inspection. Immediately afterward, they are washed, dried, and woven into mohair fabric, a premium material several times more expensive than sheep's wool, thanks to its natural luster and extreme durability, with prices reaching over $1,000 per meter. Leaving behind the plateaus where Angora goats produce their precious raw silk, the journey continues westward to the Aegean region, where rolling hills are blanketed by centuries-old olive groves. It is from this land that about 4 million tons of olives are harvested each year, helping to place Turkey among the world's leading olive-producing powerhouses. Unlike flat olive-growing regions like Spain, about 75% of olive trees in Turkey are located on hillsides or steep terrain. Shakers are used to handle lower branches, long poles reach the upper boughs, and underneath, a large net system is spread across the ground to catch all the falling fruit. When the shaking device is activated, mechanical force is transmitted straight into the trunk, causing the heavily laden clusters of olives to detach from the branches one by one and fall directly onto the nets, thereby significantly minimizing bruising and contamination with dirt and sand. From this moment on, all the olives must be rushed straight to the factory as quickly as possible, because just a few hours of delay can cause the fruit to ferment and lose quality right from the first pressing. The processing procedure begins with cleaning away impurities, followed by crushing the whole fruit, both flesh and pits, and mixing it at cold press temperatures for about 20 to 45 minutes. The oil is then centrifuged to separate the water, filtered, and immediately bottled in dark glass or metal cans to prevent light-induced degradation. The entire process must be completed within 24 hours of harvest to preserve the freshest flavor possible. Compared to Italian or Greek olive oil, Turkish oil is generally about 30 to 40% cheaper, largely because it is still exported in bulk rather than under proprietary brands. In return, the competitive price allows buyers to access freshly pressed oil right during the late-year harvest, the time when polyphenol levels are typically at their highest. In the early 20th century, following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, imported coffee in Turkey became expensive and scarce, forcing the nation to seek a beverage it could produce domestically. From a mere substitute, tea quickly spread across all social classes, becoming a daily habit and making Turkey the world's largest consumer of tea. Amidst this shift, Rise Tea rose to become the most prominent name, laying the foundation for a tea industry valued at approximately $1.3 billion USD. From May to October, as the tea hills enter their strongest growth phase, the harvest officially begins. In Turkey, farmers are not overly strict about the 2 leaves in a bud rule applied in many other famous tea regions. Lacking the high-capacity harvesting machines found in Japan, they use handheld shears combined with cloth bags to quickly and neatly trim the tea buds along perfectly straight rows. After harvesting, bags of fresh tea are gathered for rapid transport to the processing plant. However, most of the tea plantations in Rise are located on high and steep mountain slopes, making transportation particularly difficult. To overcome this obstacle, locals have built small cable car systems running across the tea hills, specifically used to carry bags of leaves across valleys and treacherous terrain. Just hours after harvest, the tea leaves are brought into the factory to wither under controlled airflow. Just a few hours after harvest, the tea leaves are transported straight to the factory to be withered by a controlled stream of air. Subsequently, the raw material is gently rolled to break down the cells, triggering a natural oxidation process that creates its characteristic reddish-brown color and rich aroma. Once the desired quality is achieved, the tea is dried to lock in the flavor, then sorted and packaged. It is thanks to the Black Sea climate, where thick snow covers the ground every winter, that pests and diseases are completely eliminated, allowing the tea to grow naturally without the need for pesticides or chemicals. This characteristic gives Turkish tea its signature mellow taste, low astringency, and inherent purity, making it an iconic beverage in daily life. As one of Turkey's oldest native sheep breeds, the Akaraman is likened to the soul of the Anatolian steppe, accounting for over 40% of the country's total sheep population. Beyond its close connection to the daily lives of the people, this breed provides large quantities of meat, milk, and wool, thereby creating livelihoods for thousands of farms. Unlike many sheep breeds with almost uniform white coats, the Akaraman stands out with patches of dark wool around its head, neck, and legs, and most notably, a large fatty tail in the rear. This fat deposit acts as a stored energy reserve, helping them survive through periods of arid pastures and scarce food. To maintain that vitality from the very beginning, lambs are often raised separately to monitor their health and control their diets. On modern farms, automated milk feeding systems ensure each lamb receives sufficient nutrition before joining the herd once they are strong enough. Upon reaching maturity, hardly any part of the Akaraman goes to waste. Beyond its utilized wool, this sheep breed also yields rich, creamy milk high in protein and minerals used to process numerous traditional products. Even so, its most prominent value still lies in its firm, flavorful meat, which features in a wide array of signature Turkish dishes, from kebabs, skewered meats, and stews to roasted lamb. More than 25 million tons of canola oil are consumed worldwide each year, yet few people know that the name canola is actually short for Canadian oil low acid, a variety of rapeseed developed by Canadian scientists to produce an edible oil that is low in saturated fat and highly beneficial for heart health. Today, this crop covers approximately 8.5 million hectares of Canadian farmland in brilliant yellow, generating around $31 billion annually through its global processing and export chain. Although the industry supports hundreds of thousands of jobs, farming across these vast growing regions has become almost completely mechanized. Guided by highly precise GPS systems, massive combine harvesters move across the fields while simultaneously separating the seeds and spreading the straw behind them. Harvesting dozens of hectares per hour, these machines continuously measure moisture levels, create real-time yield maps, and unload the seeds into trucks driving alongside them without ever having to stop. Immediately after harvest, the canola seeds are transported to processing plants. Yorkton, Saskatchewan, a strategic railway hub connecting Canada with the United States and major seaports, is home to some of the world's largest oilseed crushing facilities, operated by companies such as Richardson International and Louis Dreyfus Company. The seeds are unloaded directly from rail cars into receiving hoppers, where they are cleaned, dried, flaked, and then fed into mechanical pressing lines. But remarkably, the value of canola seeds does not end once the oil has been extracted. The protein-rich material left behind is dried and processed into canola meal, which has become one of the livestock industry's most important high-protein feed sources. Simply adding it to a dairy cow's diet can increase milk production by an average of up to 1 liter per day, transforming a byproduct of oil extraction into a multi-billion-dollar source of economic value. Continuing our journey of discovery, let us venture deep into the maple forests at the precise moment when winter gives way to spring. A place that produces a specialty selling for tens of dollars per liter, making it 20 to 30 times more expensive than crude oil. Maple syrup. Supplying around 80% of global production, Canada currently leads this market, with the province of Quebec alone accounting for 90% of the country's output. Everything begins with a harvest window that lasts for only a few weeks each year. Maple sap flows only when temperatures fluctuate within the right range. At night, they must fall below 0 degrees Celsius, allowing the tree to draw water upward from its roots, while during the day, temperatures rise above freezing, pushing the sugar-rich sap through the trunk. To release the sap, workers drill a small hole about 4 to 5 centimeters deep into the tree, just enough to reach the sap-conducting layer of the wood without damaging the tree's living core. Instead of hanging individual buckets as they did in the past, the modern industry now uses a far more efficient solution. Each tap is connected to a network of tubes that converge into main pipelines running through the forest. From there, vacuum pumps create a pressure difference that keeps the sap flowing steadily from thousands of maple trees directly to the processing facility. Within 24 hours of harvesting, maple sap must be processed immediately to preserve its full flavor. In fact, the liquid contains as much as 98% water and only about 2% sugar. It must therefore first pass through a reverse osmosis system to remove part of the water before being transferred to stainless steel pans or evaporators for further concentration. At exactly 104 degrees Celsius, 4 degrees Celsius above the boiling point of water, the natural sugars begin to caramelize, causing the liquid to thicken and develop its distinctive amber color and aroma. This painstaking process comes at a significant cost. On average, it takes around 40 liters of fresh sap to produce just 1 liter of pure maple syrup. The result is a syrup rich in manganese, vitamin B2, and zinc, a classic choice for pouring over hot pancakes or waffles at breakfast. However, its popularity and high economic value have also made maple syrup a major target for widespread adulteration with corn syrup. This has prompted the Quebec government to support the establishment of the PPAQ, an organization responsible for quality control and market coordination. It also operates the Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve, which can store nearly 28 million kilograms of syrup to stabilize prices and secure global supplies whenever harvests fall short. Canada's climate is famous for prolonged snowstorms and bitter, bone-chilling cold. Yet the very temperatures of late 8 degrees Celsius or below that many people fear are an essential condition for producing ice wine, a type of wine that often sells for 5 to 10 times the price of conventional wine. Located at roughly the same latitude as southern France, the Niagara Peninsula in Ontario accounts for around 90% of Canada's ice wine production. It is one of the few regions in the world with a climate cold and stable enough to consistently produce between 1 and 2 million liters of ice wine each year. The process begins when grape growers accept the risk of losing their entire crop. From late autumn, the vineyards are covered with specialized netting to protect the fruit from migratory birds and wild animals, which are especially drawn to its high sugar content in the middle of winter. The grapes are then left hanging on the vines for another 4 months through the winter, gradually shriveling as their natural sugars and acids become highly concentrated. The harvest can begin only when outdoor temperatures fall to 8 degrees Celsius or lower, cold enough for the water inside the grapes to freeze completely. In small and medium-sized vineyards, the entire harvest is carried out by hand, with dozens of workers carefully cutting each cluster amid snow and freezing winds. From midnight until dawn, the coldest period of the day, they must race against sunrise to finish before rising temperatures begin melting the ice crystals inside the fruit. By contrast, on vineyards covering hundreds of hectares, over-the-row harvesters with arched frames standing 3 to 4 meters high can travel directly through and fully straddle each row of vines. Using precisely controlled mechanical vibrations, the frozen grapes are shaken onto conveyor belts without the protective netting having to be removed, eliminating hundreds of hours of labor under extreme conditions. While grapes harvested in summer can be transported within the same day, grapes intended for ice wine must be handled minute by minute. Once the ice inside the fruit begins to melt, the released water dilutes the juice, causing the entire batch to fall below the standards required for ice wine production. At the processing facility, crates of grapes are emptied onto conveyor belts and sent immediately into hydraulic presses while still frozen. As pressure is applied, the ice crystals remain trapped in the pomace, while the sugar-rich juice is extracted as a thick, concentrated stream of grape nectar. The extraction yield is extremely low, reaching only around 10 to 15% of that obtained in conventional winemaking. In return, the sugar concentration in ice wine can reach as high as 45 degrees Brix, making it 4 to 5 times sweeter than a can of Coca-Cola. Even so, the sweetness does not become overpowering because of the wine's naturally high acidity, creating a balanced flavor accompanied by intense aromas of honey, orange marmalade, and ripe peach. It is this painstaking process, entirely dependent on nature, that has made ice wine one of the most expensive wines in the world. Each bottle typically sells for between $50 and $100, while special vintages can command prices of several $100s. Known as the Guaraná capital of Brazil, the city of Maués in the state of Amazonas is the birthplace of one of the most iconic plants of the Amazon region. Guaraná is a native species that has been cultivated and used by the Sateré Maué people for hundreds of years. Beyond its deep cultural significance, guaraná seeds contain around 2 to 5% natural caffeine, a higher concentration than ordinary coffee beans, along with various antioxidant compounds. These unique properties have made guaraná a valuable ingredient in the food and beverage industry, as well as one of the important crops contributing to Brazil's agricultural economy. Producing high-quality guaraná requires patience and careful attention from farmers during every harvest season. When ripe, the fruit's outer skin turns bright red and naturally splits open, revealing a black seed surrounded by white flesh, creating an appearance remarkably similar to an open eye. This unique transformation is also a sign that the fruit has reached the ideal stage for harvesting. Guaraná is still harvested mainly by hand. Farmers carefully pick each fruit individually or use scissors to cut branches and clusters that have reached the right level of maturity. Since the fruits on the same plant do not ripen at the same time, machines are almost impossible to use effectively during this stage. Throughout the harvest season, farmers must return to the plantations multiple times to collect only the ripe fruits, while allowing the unripe ones to continue developing. Although this method requires significant time and labor, it helps preserve the quality of guaraná seeds before they move on to the processing stage. After harvesting, guaraná fruits undergo processing to remove the red outer skin and white pulp, leaving only the seeds inside. These seeds are then cleaned, briefly fermented, and roasted at controlled temperatures to reduce moisture, enhance their natural aroma, and improve storage quality. Finally, the guaraná seeds are ground into a fine powder or transformed into various products such as tea, dietary supplements, soft drinks, and energy drinks. Among them, the most famous is Guaraná Antarctica, an iconic Brazilian beverage that is widely consumed across the country and exported to many markets around the world. Brazil is one of the world's largest cashew producers, with the state of Ceará considered the country's cashew capital. What makes this crop fascinating is that the fruit we commonly call the cashew is actually the swollen, fleshy stalk of the plant, while the true cashew nut grows beneath it, attached to the outside of the fruit. Few people know that the cashew apple contains around 5 times more vitamin C than an orange and has a unique flavor profile, combining natural sweetness with a slightly astringent taste. When the harvest season begins, ripe cashew fruits naturally fall to the ground with the nuts still attached underneath. Farmers collect each fruit by hand, then separate the nuts from the fleshy fruit either directly in the orchard or at a nearby processing facility. The cashew nuts are dried before moving on to further processing, while the juicy cashew apples, containing nearly 90% water and highly prone to damage, can only remain fresh for about 1 to 2 days after harvesting. As a result, this fruit is rarely exported in its fresh form, meaning that experiencing its original flavor is almost exclusively reserved for people living in Brazil or in cashew-growing regions. At many traditional processing facilities in Brazil, workers still crush the fruits by stepping on them directly to break down the flesh and extract the maximum amount of juice before filtration. This juice is then processed into beverages, jams, wine, or vinegar, while the cashew nuts are steamed or roasted to remove the corrosive oil contained in the shell before the inner kernels are extracted. Finally, the cashew kernels are sorted, roasted, packaged, or transformed into a variety of high-value products, helping bring Brazilian cashews to markets around the world. Brazil is currently the world's largest producer of sisal, with the state of Bahia recognized as the country's sisal capital. Sisal is a species of agave renowned for its exceptional drought tolerance, allowing it to thrive in arid regions where many other crops struggle to survive. What gives this plant its value is neither its fruit nor its stem, but the remarkably strong fibers hidden inside its leaves. Thanks to their high tensile strength, excellent abrasion resistance, and biodegradability, sisal fibers have become an important raw material for manufacturing a wide range of products around the world. After about 2 to 3 years of cultivation, sisal plants reach their first harvest. Unlike many crops that are harvested only once, sisal can be harvested continuously for several years. Farmers begin by cutting the mature outer leaves close to the base using sharp knives or sickles, while leaving the younger leaves in the center untouched so they can continue growing. During each harvest, only a portion of the leaves is removed to ensure the plant retains enough nutrients to remain healthy and produce future harvests. The freshly cut sisal leaves are bundled into large stacks and loaded onto trailers or trucks for transport to nearby processing facilities on the same day. This step must be carried out as quickly as possible, because if the leaves are left to wilt for too long, they lose moisture, causing the fibers inside to become less flexible, lower in quality, and more difficult to extract. At the processing plant, each leaf passes through a decortication machine, which strips away the pulp and outer skin, leaving only the long fibers inside. These fibers are then thoroughly washed and either sun-dried or machine-dried before being graded according to their length, color, and overall quality. Finally, the sisal fibers are compressed into large bales and shipped to manufacturers that produce ropes, cables, carpets, brushes, sacks, and a wide range of environmentally friendly materials. Brazil is currently the largest producer of tilapia in Latin America and ranks among the world's leading tilapia-producing countries. Thanks to its abundant freshwater resources and favorable climate, tilapia grow rapidly, develop firm, high-quality flesh, and have become one of the most important species in Brazil's aquaculture industry. Today, Brazilian tilapia not only supplies the domestic market, but is also exported to many countries around the world. After approximately 6 to 8 months of farming, when the fish reach a weight of around 800 grams to over 1 kilogram, the tilapia are ready for harvest. Farmers use large nets to concentrate the fish into one corner of the cage, then transfer them onto boats or conveyor systems, using hand nets or specialized fish pumps. The entire process is carried out as quickly as possible to minimize stress on the fish and preserve the quality of the meat. Immediately after harvesting, the tilapia are placed in ice water tanks to rapidly lower their body temperature before being transported to processing plants. At the processing plant, the tilapia are thoroughly washed, scaled, gutted, and filleted, either by machine or by hand, depending on the final product. The fillets are then carefully inspected for quality, rapidly frozen, and packaged for export to markets around the world. Beyond the fillets, nearly every part of the fish is put to good use. The skin is processed into collagen and leather, while the bones, heads, and internal organs are converted into fish meal or animal feed, allowing almost the entire fish to be utilized with minimal waste. When people think of Brazil's livestock industry, massive cattle herds usually come to mind. However, few realize that the country is also home to one of the largest water buffalo populations in the Americas, with about half of them living on Maranhão Island at the mouth of the Amazon River. On Maranhão Island, water buffalo are primarily raised on vast, naturally flooded grasslands. Thanks to their excellent swimming ability and remarkable adaptation to wetland environments, they can freely cross waterways, graze on flooded pastures, and thrive throughout the year. After giving birth and entering the milking stage, female buffalo are separated from the herd and brought to the milking area on a fixed daily schedule. Before milking, their udders are carefully cleaned to ensure hygiene and food safety, after which the milk is collected either by machine or by hand, depending on the size of the farm. The fresh milk is chilled immediately after collection and quickly transported to processing plants, where it is used to produce Brazil's famous buffalo mozzarella cheese. At the processing plant, the buffalo milk is first pasteurized before beneficial bacterial cultures and coagulating enzymes are added to form curds. After the curds are cut and the whey is separated, the cheese mass is immersed in hot water and repeatedly stretched and kneaded until it develops the smooth, elastic texture that is characteristic of mozzarella. Finally, the cheese is shaped into balls or blocks, cooled in a brine solution, and packaged before being distributed to the market. With its rich, creamy flavor, soft texture, and signature stretchiness, buffalo mozzarella has become one of the most iconic products of Maranhão Island and a standout specialty of Brazil's livestock industry. Few people know that on Maranhão Island, water buffaloes were once used by local police to patrol flooded wetlands and muddy terrain where conventional vehicles could not travel. From serving as a unique means of transportation to providing the rich milk used to produce premium mozzarella cheese, water buffaloes have become a symbol of Maranhão Island and an essential part of Brazil's livestock industry.